Monday, bat like cook crack behind the mic. Man, what a weekend it was. I was watching any and almost everything over the weekend. And because of that, I've got a lot to say. So this is going to be an interesting podcast. I'm going to be all over the place. League meetings in Minnesota today start. And a lot of interesting topics are going to be on the table. We'll discuss those and more here on the 338th installment of the Louie T Network podcast that starts now. The Louie T Network is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description. Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to the 338th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I, of course, am your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Wow. Where do I start? So I told you guys I was going to be watching a massive fight in the boxing realm over the weekend. There was NBA playoff basketball. Both conference finals have seen 3 games played, and I can't begin to explain to you how shocked I am by the outcome of one series. Not as shocked by the other, but I did not expect 3-0 in both conferences right now. Think about it this way. If both teams complete the sweep, we will be without basketball for over a week and a half. The NBA finals don't start until June. Okay? No matter what happens, they're not starting the NBA finals sooner. That date is set for whatever, June 1st, June 2nd, whenever they decide to start it. But the finals is always billed as starting in June, right? That's already etched in stone. So if these two teams get swept, the Lakers and the Celtics, we'll be without basketball. It'll almost be like the break you get between, the championship weekend in the NFL and then the Super Bowl. Like there's a 2-week gap between when the championship games are played and then the Super Bowl. That's how it will be. The buildup for that finals will be crazy because you'll have so much time off for these two teams. That's insane. I don't know if I've ever seen that. And, every time I say that, I always go back and say, somebody will, well, Louie T, this actually happened in 1997. Well, Louie T, this actually happened in 2003. I don't know when the last time, I can't remember. My brain can't recall the last time both teams swept their way into the finals. I can't remember because normally when you get to the finals, it's 2 evenly matched teams. One may be superior to the other, but it's rare that you get a team that maybe didn't belong there and they get swept. I can't begin to tell you how shocked I am by what has happened to the Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals. I don't know the last time I was that wrong nor that surprised by an outcome in a series. That generally doesn't happen in basketball. You can be shocked and surprised in football. You can be shocked and surprised in baseball. It happens so often in hockey that you shouldn't be shocked anymore. 8 seeds beat 1 seeds all the time in hockey. In basketball, 7 seeds don't make it to the finals. The Heat are in the finals. The Celtics spirit has been broken. Those 2 wins in Boston in games 1 and 2 broke their spirits. Those boys quit on the court last night. That was as pathetic of a display as I've seen from a team that had gone to the finals the year before that was supposed to be going back as I've ever seen in my life. Those boys quit. The Heat took their will to fight from them. And then Jimmy Butler taunted them as the crowd chanted, "We want Haslam. We want Haslam." I mean, it doesn't get much worse than what we saw from the Celtics last night. They're going to be swept. I was talking to my dad. I was talking to Boss on the phone. And he said, the Celtics are done. They're getting swept. I was like, Boss, you tripping, man. They about to make this a series. Ain't no way both teams getting swept because the Lakers are probably getting swept too. And I could see the Lakers putting up enough fight, stealing one, and then it's over in 5. They're dead too. These series are done. It's Nuggets and Heat in the finals. But the Lakers have fought. They just haven't been good enough. And I talked about this throughout the first two series with the Lakers. I said they can't shoot. And it went on deaf ears. Lakers fans didn't want to hear any of it because they were finding ways to win. They were getting to the free throw line. They were causing turnovers, getting out in transition. And so that was able to circumvent the fact that they can't shoot. But I said the Nuggets can shoot. And I thought the Nuggets might be a little careless with the basketball. I didn't think there would be this huge discrepancy in free throws attempted because that's what the Warriors have been all year long. They've taken the least amount of free throws and the Lakers have taken the most. So you knew that was going to be something that could potentially end up factoring in the outcome, and it did. But the Warriors have always been a very negligent team with the basketball. They've always been turnover prone. Even when they were winning championships, they've been turnover prone. But they've always been able to overcome it with their ability to shoot and elite defense, which they have neither of them right now going for them this year in particular. Curry and company did not shoot it well against the Lakers. However, in the first series against Memphis is a young team. They turn it over, and they had a bunch of injuries, but they turned the ball over and allowed the Lakers to get out into transition, and the Grizzlies can't shoot either. Okay, so it made it easy for LA to find a way to win. They've run into their match. This is as far as the Lakers go because now their lack of three-point shooting is glaring. It is glaring. LeBron made his first three-pointer of the series in game 3. Now, it's not because he didn't attempt any in the first 2 games. He just hasn't been able to make any. D'Angelo Russell has went to sleep. Okay? They can't. The only 2 guys that can really truly shoot on that team right now is Austin Reeves and Rui Hachimura. And I'll just run at the dude from San Antonio, Lonnie Walker. I'll just run at him, run him off the line. Everybody else, hey, have at it. You want to shoot? Go ahead. Knock yourself out. You guys stink behind the three-point line. And what the Nuggets have done is they've taken care of the basketball. They had 5 turnovers or 6 turnovers in the entire game in game 2 or 3 on the road. 3 or like 6. That's it, right? They've taken care of the basketball. It stops the Lakers from getting into their transition offense, and it forces the Lakers to have to execute in the half court. They haven't fouled and put the Lakers on the free throw line like the other teams have done in the previous 2 series. And the Nuggets have knocked down shots, unlike Memphis and Golden State. And so it's been a perfect storm. And oh, by the way, Nikola Jokic has been the best player in the playoffs this year. He's been the MVP the previous 2 seasons, and he's proving exactly why he's viewed as one of the best players in the NBA right now. He is dominating the playoffs, and particularly this series. And he's got his partner in crime, Jamal Murray, who had 30 points in the first half against the Lakers, continuing where he left off in game 2, the fourth quarter of game 2. He's been spectacular. But how about KCP? How about Bruce Brown? How about the unsung heroes? You need those guys to step up in postseason play. They've gotten it. But back to the Celtics for a second. I'm just absolutely floored at how they've shrunk in the biggest moment. Like game 1, it's expected. You know, this big adrenaline, this big emotional wave that you have in beating the Sixers in game 7. And then it's a quick turnaround and you're back on the floor for game 1, and you can get beat. I've told you the numbers. The teams that win a game 7 are like 33 and 53 in game 1. Like it's not easy to turn around and then win game 1 because of so much emotional energy spent in game 7. But I expected them to take care of business in game 2, and there were stretches where they looked like they were going to do that. But again, I talk about role players. How about Caleb Martin for the Miami Heat? A guy in Robinson who was buried on the bench. And if not for injuries, and this is what makes what the Heat are doing so ridiculous right now, like almost hard for my brain to fathom. And this is that Heat culture. And I laughed and I joked about Heat culture, but shit is real because you got a guy like Duncan Robinson who pretty much wasn't getting off the bench the latter half of the regular season, didn't really play in the playoffs leading up to this series. And you have the injuries, but he still wasn't really getting all that many minutes. And then they said, this is a series that we're going to need you. And he's played significant minutes and he's coming up huge. Talked about Caleb Martin having a massive game 2 in particular. I can't say enough about Gabe Vincent. I've been joking about Gabe Vincent for the last 2 or 3 years, probably going all the way back to the bubble. I'm like, you can't win a championship with Gabe Vincent as your starting point guard. Are you kidding me? Get out of my face with that nonsense. Gabe Vincent hit some big shots in game 2, a big 3, and then the 2 up 2 after he had a stupid foul to allow the Celtics to make 3 free throws and cut it to a 2-point lead. He went right back down, hit a step back jumper, and pushed it back out to 4. He's been huge. He had 29 points in game 3 in that blowout to lead all scorers for the Miami Heat. Like, it's amazing what these guys are doing, right? But it's even more baffling as to how the Celtics have shrunk. Now, and Joe Mazzulla is just taking a pounding right now. And look, there's enough blame to go around. Jaylen Brown has been invisible. Jason Tatum has been turning the ball over. He's not shooting it well. They're not getting any contributions from those guys on the bench. You had all of these guys playing exceptionally well. White was huge last year to that run to the finals. He's been, hit or miss. They've gotten absolutely pretty much nothing from Malcolm Brogdon in this series, and he was arguably one of the best players off the bench all season long. And so it's just been amazing to watch the Celtics shrivel up into this lesser version of themselves, and the Heat just continue to rise to the occasion. I can't remember a time that I've been more surprised by an outcome of a series. It's one thing for the Heat to win this series, but for them to potentially sweep the Celtics, remember, this is a 2 seed versus a 7 seed we're talking about here, right? In this series. I'm lost right now. I'm at a loss because the Heat are the Heat the 8 seed? They're the 8 seed, excuse me, not the 7 seed. They're the 8 seed. The Lakers are a 7 seed. They're an 8 seed. They beat the 1 seed. They beat the 2 seed now. They're going to beat the 2 seed. I'm just absolutely floored at how well the Heat, and I'll say this too, and I've been saying this for a while. Eric Spoelstra is the best coach in the NBA. I don't, and if you got another name, I'd love to hear it. We can go back and forth, but I don't think there's a better coach in the NBA than Eric Spoelstra. You can give any other coach in the league this roster, and I guarantee you they're not here. They're not here in the Eastern Conference Finals. Even with the injuries and all, they're not here. Give Steve Kerr this roster. They're not here. Okay? Any coach you want. All right? Doc Rivers, whomever you deem, Nick Nurse, all these guys that have gotten fired, Budenholzer, all these coaches that have won Coach of the Year. Mike Brown, I think, won it this year. Give it to whoever. Give them this roster. I guarantee you they're not here on the precipice of going back to the finals for the, second time in, 4 years with this roster? This is the same roster pretty much. And again, this is what absolutely blows my mind. They're doing this without Victor Oladipo. Oh, it's Oladipo. Oh, and they're doing it without Tyler Hero. Tyler Hero is one of their best players. Total mind blow. But in any event, so those series are done. Get ready for Nuggets and Heat in the NBA Finals. Boxing. I told you guys I was going to be excited about a massive fight. And it delivered. That fight was exactly why, if you're a boxing fan, you both love the sport and hate it at the same time. To me, that fight epitomizes why boxing is in the state that it's in. That fight was so good. If you're a boxing fan like myself, no knockouts, not even a single knockdown in the fight, but just from a technical standpoint, from an action standpoint, start to finish, that fight was everything it was built up to be. Devin Haney, for those of you who don't know, came in as the undisputed champion. And really, I feel like Vasily Lomachenko felt like that should have been his title, right? He should have been the undisputed champion. He was going to fight George Kambosos and unify the belts before deciding to go and serve his country. He's from the Ukraine. He decided to serve his country instead. And that stripped him of that opportunity. Guess who filled in for him after he had to drop out of the fight? Devin Haney. Haney went over there, won. There was a contract clause in there that stated that Haney would have to fight Kambosos again. He went over there, beat him in Australia again. And thus he is the unified champion of the lightweight division. And thus, I think Vasily Lomachenko felt like I was supposed to be the unified champ, not you. And so he was out to prove. And the biggest thing that Lomachenko has struggled with in losses, or even some of the fights that were closer than they needed to be, just getting off the slow starts. He's always the more skilled fighter. He's usually got the better footwork, faster hands, all of the things that you need to be successful. He's got it. He just starts slow for whatever reason. And what he usually picks it up, though, and it's usually good enough to get him the victory. Well, it wasn't against Teofimo Lopez. And I said if he came out slow in this fight, he was going to lose. I said if he didn't come out slow, I expected him to win, because even though I've watched Devin Haney do some great work against George Kambosos the last two outings, I still didn't think he was at the level that he needed to be to take care of Vasily Lomachenko. I will say Devin Haney was game. He was more than game. He was ready. And him and his dad put together one hell of a game plan. Their game plan was simply, we're going to the body. We're going to be active early. We're going to try to attack the scorecards because he loves giving away rounds early. Well, let's take those shits. Let's not make it close. Let's take these rounds. If he's giving them away, if he's being generous, let's get up on him 4 or 5 rounds early in the fight. And then that'll put us in a position where we only need to win 1 or 2 rounds late to ice this thing away. And the other thing that they were going to look to do was they were going to go to the body. And it was there for the taking. And boy, did Devin Haney punish him in the first 4 rounds in particular to the body. You could even say maybe the 5th round as well. But I thought his body work in the first round in particular, in the 4th round, what? and for Loma to eat those body shots the way that he did, and not only eat them, but have them be the guy with the most energy late in the fight. Normally, there's this saying in boxing, you put money in the bank, right? Going to the body is the equivalent of putting money in the bank. And you keep depositing, those shots. You keep depositing that money in the bank, keep depositing those shots to the body. Eventually, you'll be able to withdraw your money or withdraw that stamina from that fighter later in the fight. And now you're able to dominate in the championship rounds because you went to the body early. And Haney was punishing him early in the fight. And Lomachenko, and these were some vicious body shots. These weren't just little love taps. And Lomachenko was able to eat those body shots early and still be the more dynamic and energized fighter in those championship rounds. And I'll take it a step further. Lomachenko was game from the jump. I thought that he won the 2nd and 3rd rounds. I had scored for him. I thought that Haney, so after 8 rounds, I had Haney up 5-3 on Lomachenko. And I thought Loma won the final 4 rounds. And from 10, 11, and 12, really 9, 10, and 11 for sure, you could have went either way in the 12th round, honestly. But I had it for Loma in the 12th round as well. He landed the cleaner shots. He was more active, I think. 9, 10, and 11 were definite wins for Lomachenko. And the 10th round, you could have scored that 10-8. He was so dominant in the 10th round. So much so that back in his corner, Devin Haney said he's figured it out. He knows he's going to the left. And he knows what we're doing, and he's going to the left. And his dad's like, yeah, we knew he was going to figure it out. And Haney's like, but he's doubling it up, though. Like, he didn't have an answer. He didn't know what to do anymore. He was stuck. And you could see Loma had figured him out, and he was punishing him in the championship rounds. Loma dominated from rounds 9 to 12, if you ask me. He went into the 9th round down 2 rounds, won the final 4 rounds, and should have won the fight 115, 113 on all 3 scorecards. And somehow, not only did he lose by unanimous decision, one of the judges had the audacity to have the fight 116, 112. Haney, what are you looking at? What fight are you watching? Did you only score the final 4 rounds for Lomachenko? Are you kidding me? Seriously. Unreal. Now, it wasn't the easiest fight to score. So if you had it Haney, okay, whatever. Like, you can't have it 116, 112, though. That's ridiculous. And to me, it should have either been 115, 113 Loma, or it should have been a draw. I don't see how you had Haney winning, 7 out of the 12 rounds. But again, some of those early rounds that I gave to Loma, you could easily have given to Haney, and it is what it is. But at the end of the day, man, it was a fantastic fight. I thought Loma in the championship round stepped up and dominated. And that, to me, is what being a champion is all about. And it wasn't like his previous fights, as I mentioned, where he got off to these ridiculously slow starts and then came on late. He started fast enough to where he shouldn't have been in that hole that some of those judges, I believe, put him in. I think they put him in a box like, oh, he starts slow. I don't think that was the case. I was disappointed in the outcome of that fight. Loma deserved better than that. And he's 35, man. And it's not like he's going to get a ton more of these opportunities. So I thought he was robbed. I thought he was robbed. His dad thought he was robbed, which is his trainer. And that's why you hate boxing. I love it and I hate it at the same time because it's so subjective. These judges are supposed to be scoring off a particular criteria, right? And you don't know what a particular judge is looking for. One's looking for defense and ring generalship. The other guy's looking for the cleaner punches. Somebody else is looking for activity. Even though he's not landing, they're looking at activity. Loma landed. He was more active. Loma landed the cleaner punches, the more impactful punches. I don't know if Loma, I think he was hurt once in the fight. Just one time. Loma hurt Devin Haney at least 3 times in the last 4 rounds. I can't understand what they were looking at. But and then you had fighters weighing in, right? You had Shakur Stevenson saying Loma won the fight. And now his card was a little outrageous. He said he had an 8-4 Loma. That's a little bit again, that's where that other judge had it the other way for Haney. That's a little extreme for me. But I'm with you. He won the fight. And he was, and then the one that did it for me was Bud Crawford, because Bud Crawford, Devin Haney is his boy, right? And he didn't come out and say that Loma won, but they asked him, and he was like, I guess they saw the body work that Haney was doing. Like, when you say it that way, he's insinuating I had Loma winning. I guess the body work early was what did it for him, but he didn't want to come out and say, hey, yeah, my boy ain't win. But he pretty much said it without saying it. Like, Bud Crawford was like, yeah, nah, Loma won the fight, And a lot of boxers that watched that thing thought Loma won. And I thought he was robbed. Ryan Garcia thought Loma won. At the end of the day, it is what it is. But that's what makes boxing so frustrating. So I told you I was watching everything under the sun. You know what? I'm going to save that for later in the show. Let's get to the gem dropping session, shall we? I think we shall. Let me drop this gem on your melon. Open your mind, let your conscience be free. You're now rolling with your man, Louie T double E. Let me open you up. Get you thinking a little bit. So, NFL league meetings are underway in Minnesota as we speak. And there are a couple of big ticket items that will be discussed and voted on And I talked about one of them on the last show, which is the Thursday night flexing of the schedule. We'll talk about that here in a second. Another item that has already been voted on and passed. We talked about this on a previous podcast, but remember we talked about teams wanting, and this is really stemming from the 49ers NFC Championship game and them not having another quarterback available during that game. So remember we talked about them wanting to change the rules of having another quarterback on game days as an emergency player that won't be counted against your 53-man active game day roster, right? So the league has voted on that, and they've passed an initiative that will allow teams to have a third emergency quarterback on game days. So that quarterback can't do anything else. Obviously, you wouldn't have that guy doing anything else, but he won't count towards your 53-man active roster. He'll be off to the side, and if you need him, you break that glass in case of an emergency, and he's there now. So I like that addition. And it used to be that way, and then for some reason they changed the rules as time, pushed forward. But they're going back to what it used to be, which is you can have that third emergency quarterback if need be. And so I like that rule. So that's already been passed. Here's a rule that hasn't been talked about as much. And a lot of people think that this is a ploy by the league to distract people away from what Roger Goodell really wants to push, which is the Thursday night flexing. But there's this new rule that the NFL is trying to institute, similar to the college football rule, right? Where you can fair catch a kickoff inside the 20-yard line, and it's a touchback, and you get the ball at the 25-yard line. So you've seen college football. You could be at the 8-yard line, you fair catch it, and you start at I think in college it's still the 20. But in the NFL, it would be the 25. They've moved that out to the 25-yard line. So the NFL wants to implement that because they've seen a precipitous drop off in the amount of concussions and things in college football, right? And what the NFL pushback is to that is that it's a different game. It's a different level of speed and athleticism and talent. And also, college football is college football. Like, nobody's putting in intricate thought into, all right, you want to fair catch it? Well, I'm going to squib this bitch. Because Bill Belichick, he's ignorant enough to say, okay, you want to fair catch all your shit? All right, we're going to squib this bitch to the left corner, have that shit die at like the 3-yard line. Now you got to pick the bitch up, and we coming to get you. And there will be teams that will take advantage of that. And special teams coordinators have gotten together. They teams, and what they've done effectively is they've banded together. All 32 teams have sent a representative from their team that's a special teams ace to these league meetings. They've banded together, and they're going to try to vote against this initiative that the league is trying to push across with the fair catch, because they've seen an uptick. They call it an uptick in concussions over the last 3 years. It was 14% in 2020. It was 19% in 2021. I think it was 20% last year, something like that, to that effect. It wasn't a very high concussion rate. And the players and the coordinators have done a great job of isolating each concussion. And they said, look, a lot of these concussions are happening when guys are returning these kickoffs 5-6 yards deep into the end zone. It has nothing to do with guys catching it at the 6 and returning it. So I like that they're pushing back against this, because, again, it's bad enough that we already don't have any kickoffs, really. They've essentially legislated anything to do with the kicking game out of the game, when it comes to kickoffs, because of the touchbacks now. You get at the 25, most teams are like, yo, if this shit is going in the end zone, just let it go. Unless you're Cordero Patterson or one of these dynamic return men, Jamal Agnew. If you ain't one of these dudes, just let that shit go in the end zone. We'll take it at the 25. Now you want to take away teams' ability to pooch it up at the 6 or the 4 away from them, and that forces you to have to return it. And these teams are like, yo, you worried about that? Concussions aren't happening on these plays. more concussions are happening on punt returns with dudes trying to, catch the ball, they bobble it and then get their block knocked off. You know what I'm saying? So that's one of those things where they're almost trying to play a game of, hey, focus over here so you don't see what we're doing over here, right? Oh, hey, over here. Hey, trying to change this flex scheduling. So don't need you to look over there. Look over here at this special teams rule while we're over here trying to change the flex scheduling for Thursday Night Football. And the league is like, nah, we're not having that shit. The rest of the guys, Goodell is hell-bent on trying to get this Thursday Night Football initiative pushed. And, I don't really love, anybody that knows me, I can't stand the Maras. All right. I can't stand John Mara, the owner of the Giants. He's a dick. And he has this vendetta against Washington. And look, we're divisional foes. We're family members. I get it. There should be a bit of disdain there, right? But I also, still have salty feelings towards him from the 2012 salary cap penalty that was levied against Washington. He can kiss my ass. However, I agree with John Mara when it comes to Thursday night flex scheduling. He said it's abusive. That was the term that he used. So I would imagine there were 10 teams that voted against Thursday night football flex scheduling. I would imagine that he was one of them. And he's one of the powerhouse owners of the league. There are probably like 6 or 7 owners that have enough power around the league with other owners that they can band together and get enough support for something. I think he's going to stand firm on this, and I think he's going to use his influence to maybe help keep this thing from happening and becoming a reality. Because Goodell, his argument is we are always looking to put the best product on the field, and last year wasn't it. And while I understand that, it's Thursday night. It's different when you want to flex a game from 4:25 to 8:15, or you want to flex a game from 1 o'clock to 8:15 at night or 8:20. That's different, right? You're talking about taking a game that was on at Sunday and making it a Thursday night game. That's pretty brutal. And then the part that Mara brought up that I didn't even think about, because I don't really go to games, so it doesn't really, enter my brain, but it's a really good point. And he's like, what does this do to the fans that have bought tickets to these games? You think 15 days, which is the amount of time that they would give to these teams on the schedule so that they would know that this game has been moved from Sunday to Thursday, you think giving 15 days of notice in advance to a fan that bought these tickets back in the summertime? I bought these tickets in July to go to this week 5 game, and you're trying to move it from, Sunday to Thursday. I got to work on Thursday. I bought these tickets for a Sunday 105 kick. And now you're telling me I got to somehow make adjustments. I got a hotel. I got travel plans. I got everything set up for Sunday at 1. And now you're telling me I got to figure it out because you want this game to be on at Thursday night at 8:15? That's bullshit. And so I didn't even think about that. That didn't even enter my thought process, but that's a really good point. You have to also take into consideration the fans and their travel plans and what they've done and the accommodations that they've made to try to go to these games. So all of that to me is relevant. And I don't see how this Thursday night thing passes. I just don't. It didn't pass in March. I can't see how he could have gained any more traction between, March and May and have enough votes to get that thing. Now, they were only 2 short the last time. So all you had to do was sway 2 owners who decided to vote against it the last time. But we'll see what happens with that. We're going to be definitely keeping a watchful eye over that situation. As we already knew going into this, the owners are not going to vote on the Washington Commanders sale of the team. However, it's going to get done at some point. It's just a lot of, to me right now, dotting of the I's, crossing of the T's, a lot of formalities right now. Again, a lot of questions have been raised about the finances of, the new potential ownership group coming in, and they like their owners to be very liquid. And I don't think that Josh Harris is very liquid at this point because he owns so many different entities. His resources are kind of spread out. And so while he's very wealthy, it's funny because we talk about this as if this man isn't a billionaire. While he's very wealthy, again, the archaic way the NFL is set up in terms of ownership, purchases, 30% of the purchase needs to be made in cash. You need to have that on deck, right? Again, I've already stated this. If you're paying $1.7 billion for a team and you're a wealthy billionaire, you're going to have 30% of $1.7 billion in cash. You're going to have that liquid, right? As the prices continue to go up for these franchises, 2.4, I think the Broncos sold for 4.5. As these prices start to go up, you're less likely to find guys walking around with that kind of cash. Okay. So you need to lower that number to like 10 or 15%, not 30%. So they're going to ultimately have to alter that at some point. But, again, there's certain things that they're having to go through right now. They'll figure it out. But all in all, we'll be keeping our eyes on these league meetings because, this is when rule changes happen and they slip them under the radar. And if you're not paying attention, when did that happen? I'm going to make sure you stay abreast. No worries. Anyway, so let's get to social media maneuvers. Y'all know what it is. I'm a midday marauder. Any comments out there? I see right now I don't have any supers. So any comments out there, use the hashtag LouieTLive to have your comment read on the air. If it is pertinent, we will get to it. If time permits, we will get to it. If you want to ensure that your comment gets read, super chats are the way to go about that. We'll get to as many of these hashtags as we can. I can't assure you that I'll get to yours, but we'll get to as many of them as we can. While I have a second, I want to make sure that I promote MusicHead University, my other YouTube channel where I talk about and play music. I'm a big R&B guy. That there's other genres that I will be touching on as time progresses, but everything has been really heavy on the R&B side because that's my space of expertise. Uploads are Monday, Wednesday, Friday at noon. Just dropped another video today on the Mary Jane girls, on the Jones girls. So again, and I'm all over the place. I don't go back to the 60s, okay? But I love the 70s. I love the 80s. I love the 90s, 2000s, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm all over the place. All right. So if you love music like I do, specifically R&B, but again, I'm all over the place. I'm gonna probably freak y'all out with some of the stuff that I ultimately have on the show at some point because I get into a little bit of everything. I dibble and dabble. But if you love music like I do and you just like kicking it with your man Louie T, MusicHead University is the place for you. Enroll today. Become a member of the MusicHead University school, rather. And I look forward to chopping it up with you. I've had so much fun in just this short period of time chopping it up with everyone when it comes to MusicHead U. So in any event, let's get to the comment section, see what you guys have to say. See if we got any comments here. Jason Bree writes, Lou, hope you are well. Likewise, Jason says, by the way, it is Briex. Okay, Briex. Okay. Jason Briex says, international question. How do you feel about a team overseas? Interest and potential here in Germany are through the roof. Cheers. I don't think an international team, like I know the NFL would love to do something like that. They've talked about it. Like it'd have to be a team moving from the US. Like to me, it would not make sense for an expansion team because you have divisions set up perfectly right now, like 30, and that wouldn't stop the NFL. If they had to add a 33rd team, they would do it. But 32 is the magic number. If I were them, I don't want any more franchises added to the league. If someone were moving, i.e. Jacksonville, for instance, that's been the name that's always been thrown out there because they don't have the greatest home attendance. This is why Jacksonville will be the first team in NFL history this year to play multiple games overseas in a single season, because they almost have adopted across the pond as their alternate home, right? It'll have to be a team like that or a situation like that where a team ups and moves. But to start a brand new franchise, I think logistically it'd be tough, because internationally means you're going to have 8 home games, 9 depending on what season it is, 7 in other years because of the new way that they're doing things with playing, that extra 17th game against either an AFC or an NFC opponent, and every other year alternating home and away in those situations. You could have up to 9 games at home, and you're asking teams to have to travel across it's a lot. It's a lot. And so I don't know if I see that being something that's doable, to have a team there and to know that you're having at a bare minimum 7, 8, or 9 games across the pond, not to mention the international series. If you have an international team, would you still need to do the international series? I don't know. I don't see that happening. But they love, this is why they're doing it. They want to drum up interest in the sport. They're trying to be more like the NBA and make it a global sport. So, I don't know. Maybe that's something they'll explore down the line. I see y'all talking about Pop. Pop wouldn't have these boys no damn where. Pop old ass would not have these Miami Heat. Pop's team looks very similar to this team. They don't have Jimmy Butler. That's the biggest difference. But he got a bunch of these same ass dudes on his team, and they one of the worst teams in NBA right now. All right, don't give me Greg Popovich. Pop ain't doing shit with this unit here. Okay, trust and believe. Rich writes, it was a great fight both ways. Loma won clearly to me. He did enough early, probably got like 2-3 rounds, which is what I had. I had him down 5-3, which is, again, when he dominated the way he did in 9 through 12, he did more than enough to put himself in a position to win that fight. That was robbery. He says, got like 2-3 rounds early. Then I believe he took 9 through 12 in dominant fashion, maybe besides 12. That's the exact same way that I felt. 12 is the only one that's debatable. If you had it as a draw, then you gave the 12th round to Haney. I still thought that he was neither one of them were super aggressive in the 12th round, but I thought he was still the aggressor. I thought he was still landing the cleaner punches. He had the flurries in the 12th round. I thought he won the 12th round as well. He was dominant in 9, 10, and 11, specifically the 10th round. Again, you could argue that's a 10-8 round. Haney landed 2 punches in the 10th round. Loma landed 20. I mean, it was a total domination in the 10th round. I don't understand it. I don't understand it. Kyle, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Kyle writes, are the Jets wild card of AFC this year enough weapons? They got plenty of weapons. That's not the question. They've loaded up on weapons between Alan Lazard and Mecole Hardman. They had the rookie of the year offensively there, and Garrett Wilson. They got weapons on offense. They loaded up on tight ends. They got tight ends galore. They went in free agency, went crazy last year. They added another guy in the draft. It's about, can you protect Aaron Rodgers, which I feel like they feel like they've done enough to be able to do that. And they got running backs for days, right? Got Michael Carter. Remember, Breece Hall was tearing it up before he tore up his knee, and so he'll be back. I think they added another running back either via free agency or through the draft. Either way, I think they added Abaconda out of Pitt. So they're loaded, man. They got weapons for days. It's not about weapons at this point. It's just about how well will the defense play, and can they keep Aaron Rodgers upright, and is Rodgers still Rodgers? Right? I'm putting a lot of his struggles last year on a lack of continuity with a bunch of young receivers, and then he was banged up as well. The thumb and all of that stuff that he was dealing with. I'm putting that on that stuff. If he's healthy and they protect him, the Jets are definitely dangerous in the AFC. Lorenzo Simpson, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Lorenzo writes, if Washington were to rebrand, I'd want to be called the Warriors with the 03 season uniforms with the spear on the helmet. So Warriors, I wasn't a fan of Warriors because there's already like the Golden State Warriors. Like, I think there's something to be said about like uniqueness. And so I don't really like the fact that you'd be essentially the Washington Warriors and we have Warriors. And not that there's not copycats in other leagues, but for the most part in the NFL, there's there's the New York Giants and the San Francisco Giants, right? Like there's duplicates. I'm not making it seem like everybody's got a unique name to their particular team, but it's tough, man. You got the Seattle Seahawks, you got the Atlanta Hawks. People call the Seahawks the Hawks, but we know they're the Seahawks if you want to get technical. I just hate duplicates. The Warriors already cornered that market, so I kind of just want to leave that alone. But I get the 03 throwbacks, those were pretty dope. And so, I totally understand where you are going with that theme. But even that would cause problems within the fan base, because if that's your base uniform, that's maroon. That ain't burgundy. You know what I'm saying? That's like a deep, deep maroon. So where do you implement the burgundy at? Do you like the color scheme would be altered at that point? Because that's not even gold. That's like goldenrod, goldenrod or whatever that color is. Like that's not even burgundy and gold anymore. So that would be a hard sell for I think the purists who have been fans of this team for a very long time. But those uniforms are dope. You're not going to get any pushback from me. That's for sure. Anyway, Rich writes, I still believe Shakur is untouchable in boxing, though. I think most of them are scared, but Haney will get pressured into fighting him and then lose his belt. A lot of people are talking about Tank. And the reason a lot of people think Haney would not be able to stand in there with Tank is because of that left hand. Loma was abusing him with the left. Abusing him. He couldn't block the left. He didn't see the left. We know how devastating Tank's left is. And so I don't know what is the future for Haney. That's the big question everybody's asking, like, what's next for Haney? Haney doesn't even know. Look, he barely made it out of this fight. Barely made it. If you put him against one of those boys that you're talking about, whether it's Shakur or, it's Tank, it's going to be tough, man. He's going to have to come better than what he came with, because you could tell, and to his point, to his credit, he's been dominant against the guys he's fought, and those championship rounds haven't really mattered much. He's been so dominant. This was the first time he was fighting a guy of equal or greater talent, and it showed in the final rounds, the championship rounds. It showed. He was not poised. He was reeling, and I thought the 12th round he settled down a bit. I think a large part of that was because Loma was running out of gas, and he didn't want to make a mistake and walk into something being over aggressive, because he thought he won the fight. After dominating the way that he did in 9, 10, and 11, he was like, look, just keep, being consistent, but don't walk into some shit on some Julio Cesar Chavez, Meldrick Taylor shit. Don't walk into something here late and get caught and lose a fight that you probably going to win. He had to be devastated when he got to the scorecards and seeing what they had, because he probably would have been more aggressive in the 12th round if he would have known that's how they were scoring the fight, but I mean, it is what it is. James Jones says he had a draw the first watch. Second rewatch, he had 7-5 Loma. Then the third time it was 8-4 Loma. I've watched it twice. And the first time I had it, it was like definitely Loma. The second time I was like talking myself into a draw because of that 12th round. But to me, it was 7-5 Loma. I felt the same way both times watching it. 7-5 Loma. And I had it the same way. I was 5-3 going into the ninth. And then Loma took off from there, won the final 4 rounds, and won the fight 7-5 in my estimation. But, you know, that's boxing for you, man. Anyway, I digress. Rich says, breaking news, they just passed the Thursday night flex. I'm looking at my phone now to confirm that. Owners approve flex Thursday night games. Yep, 24-8. So all Raj had to do was flip 2 guys that, that voted against it in March, and he was able to do that. Only 2 flexes allowed all season and must be done with 28 days notice. So I think that was the thing that he probably went back to the drawing board and altered, because initially it was 15 days, which is 2 weeks. Now it's got to be a month in advance, essentially 4 weeks. That's enough time for a team. It still sucks for someone that bought their tickets in August. I don't give a shit if you give me 2 months in advance. I bought those tickets thinking I was going to a Sunday game, or I might have bought the tickets for the Thursday night game, and then you flex it and now it's a Sunday game. Well, I already took off from work for Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and now you're telling me that I'm screwed, right? Like, it still sucks for the fan, but a month in advance is enough time for a team to make the necessary adjustments to the schedule. It still sucks, period. And it's only 2 games a year, but doesn't matter. Raj got his wish, is what ultimately happened there. So they're now going to be able to flex Thursday night games. Abel Ambrosio writes, Nuggets and Heat in the finals. Who you got winning it all? The Nuggets. They've been the best team in the West pretty much all season long. I think early in the season it was the Pellies. Then, the Grizzlies had it for a brief time, and then it was the Nuggets. They took over and they never looked back. They dusted the rest of the conference, and they've been the most dominant team in the playoffs to this point. They smoked the Timberwolves in the first series. They dusted off the Suns in the second series, and they're dominating the Lakers in this Western Conference Finals, and they haven't lost a game at home yet. The Heat won't have an answer for Joker. The real question will be, will their role players continue to play as well as they've been playing? The KCPs, the Bruce Browns, and we know Murray is Murray. So will the Heat collectively be able to do what they've done against the Nuggets and have it be enough? I don't think that's going to be the case, but it's amazing. The Nuggets will have an opportunity. This will be the first time they've made it to the NBA Finals, and they'll have a chance to win it all. And I think they will. I feel like very similar to how I felt about Giannis 2 years ago. You better win it this year, because I don't know if the Nuggets will be back after this. Like, everything kind of lined up for them perfectly as far as injuries in the West are concerned. And just, the Warriors just getting their shit together. Wiggins didn't play until the playoffs, right? Like, they were still trying to figure some shit out, even though they could be done. The Warriors, as we know it, they may be losing their GM, Bob Myers. The Wizards have already said, hey, we're interested. If anything happens with you in Golden State and y'all part ways, hey, hit us up first, right? So the Wizards are trying to turn their shit around with Bob Myers. And if Myers goes, we could see that whole thing kind of disintegrate right in front of our very eyes. And the Warriors, as we have known them, could be done. But, obviously, I'm a Memphis fan. I feel like, we would have been a good match for them. They might have beaten us anyway, because I was always afraid of the Nuggets. I was telling my homeboy probably like 40 games into the season, I'm like, yo, the Nuggets, man. We were talking. I said, I'm scared shitless of the Nuggets, because they put it on us a couple of times in the regular season. We beat them too, but they put it on us a couple of times. And I was like, I don't want no smoke with them. He's like, man, the Nuggets is trash. Like, he's a hater or whatever. Like, he didn't want to give them credit. I got to ask him now, what you think about the Nuggets? Now, his biggest thing was they've been the only team in the league really healthy the whole season. That's why their record is so good. They ain't dealt with injuries. You dealt with injuries. We dealt with injuries. And he was pointing out all the teams dealing with injuries. I'm like, that's fine. Is it their fault they were healthy? They can't control that. You want to be healthy. They've been healthy and they've taken advantage of it. They've been healthy in the postseason and they've taken advantage of that as well. So I think it's going to be the Nuggets, but we'll see what happens. Donald Woolridge, thank you for the super. Donald Woolridge writes, "What do you think about Leno getting cut and Rodriguez being RB1? Also, look out for undrafted free agent Sturgis, cornerback, taking Fuller's spot." Sturgis, I can't see him making the team. Every year we get excited, not we, you guys get excited about a particular set of, undrafted guys. Last year, it was crazy how Amani Rodgers made the team, but it was so many injuries to what it took for him to make the team. Like, the perfect storm literally brewed up and rained down on the Commanders last year at the tight end position. That's how Amani Rodgers made the football team. It's rare that an undrafted guy makes the team at a position with the type of depth that we currently have at corner. Hard for me to see a guy coming off the pace and making the team. He might have been able to make the team last year, not this year. And I don't even know this kid you're referring to, but he ain't making the team. I'm going to just say it right now. As far as Leno getting cut, highly unlikely. Highly unlikely. Again, somebody would have to knock their socks off as a tackle. It'd probably have to be Braden Daniels, honestly speaking. It could be Brooks, the undrafted kid out of Ole Miss. It could be one of those dudes, but it's highly unlikely that they're going to roll out a rookie tackle on the blind side of Sam Howell in a must-win season. I don't see it happening. I think Leno is gone after this year, after they've had those guys in their program for a year, and either they like what they saw or they weren't blown away and they go out and draft a guy. But Leno, I think, is safe. As far as Rodriguez being RB1, no chance in hell. No chance in hell. Again, you'd have to have a lot of extenuating circumstances happen in front of him to allow him to get into that spot. I don't see it happening. See. HHC Lunar writes, "Who is your sleeper team that no one is talking about?" I think I've already made mention of this when we went through the schedule, and also when I talked about the teams that I thought could make the playoffs who weren't in it last year. One of those teams nobody's really talking about is the New Orleans Saints. That division stinks. Somebody's going to win it, and you get a home playoff game, and then all of a sudden, again, the NFC is open, man. I know I keep saying that, but it's open for business, and anything can happen. And the Saints have been a good defensive team. I don't know if they'll be able to get back to that. They've lost so many parts of that defense that were integral in them being one of the better defenses over the last 2 years or so. They've lost pieces systematically. Marcus Williams, CJ Gardner, Johnson. I don't think they can be that group again, but you never know. They just lost the edge rusher that they drafted in the first round, and they lost Trey Hendrickson, 2 years ago. So I don't think they're the same defense that they once were, but they have a chance to beat the Rams or another team. You don't know what the hell you're going to get out of the Rams. Packers, again, what's Jordan Love going to come in there and be for them? There are a number of teams that fit that bill. Washington, I'm biased, but Sam Howell is what I think he could be. We got a shot, So there's a lot of teams, but Saints for me, because of that division that they're in, and how bad it is, I think they've got a shot. HHC Lunar also writes, anyone who thought Embiid was better than Joker was not thinking right. LOL. Well, you knew he wasn't going to win MVP for a third straight year, but Embiid earned it this year. Look, Embiid was averaging up over 30 points a game. He had some big time moments this season. No one's complaining about him winning MVP, but Joker is the more impactful player. And it's just funny because the conversation me and Boss were having, Boss is a 76ers fan, right? So he was pissed about how they played in game 7. And I asked him, how did he feel about Doc getting fired? And he said, I was so hot with Doc after game 7. I didn't want him fired, but I was pissed off because they were playing a 2-man game where the 76ers. Essentially, they had Embiid setting the screen for Harden. They were looking to get a cross switch and then have Embiid be able to take advantage, or have Harden be able to go ISO one-on-one with the switch, right? And have a bigger defender that couldn't stay in front of him. It just didn't work. And my dad couldn't stand Embiid being that far away from the basket. And the Nuggets are running the exact same action. Now, here's the difference. One, Joker's bringing the ball up the court, so he's initiating offense. When they set the screen and they get that cross action and that cross switch, he's taking that small-ass defender that Jamal Murray brought to him in the post, and now they have to double, and Joker's going to always make the right play, which is why every time you look up, he's got 12, 13, 14 assists. There was a beautiful play that I thought encompassed everything that makes Joker one of the most dangerous players in the league. So they run that switch action. Joker gets in the post. They double him immediately. He kicks it back out to Jamal Murray. He runs around, comes and gets a dribble handoff from Jamal Murray running full speed. He runs, attacks Anthony Davis, spins, the double team comes. He shoots a left-handed pass out to the perimeter at the wing to Michael Porter Jr., who then shoots a bounce pass to the corner to Jeff Green for a wide open 3 that he knocks down. And that essentially is Joker in a nutshell. The difference between Joel Embiid is he can't take a dribble handoff, full speed, turn, pivot, and then pinpoint pass, initiate the offense, extra pass, wide open shot. He's not doing that. As skilled as Joel Embiid is, he's not as fluid as Joker. He's been fantastic, man. Reedy Davis, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Reedy Davis writes, Lou, think we end up with a better record than the Giants? I do, but I mean, we'll see. As we've seen, they're better coached than us. They were at least last year. Eric Bieniemy coming in here may change that, but they've got more talent now. We saw that they were well coached last year. If they're anything like they were last year in terms of being disciplined and well coached, and then now adding more talent, I don't believe in Daniel Jones. Just like the reason I didn't put the Lions in the playoffs, I don't believe in Jared Goff. I don't believe in Daniel Jones. So he's gonna have to make a believer out of me still, because a lot of what he did last year was some elementary shit, and he did it well, and I ain't mad at him. But now I want to see, with more talent around him, does he up his game, or is he still, the same old Daniel Jones? We'll see. Joe Rockhead, this will be the last one, who writes, I saw footage of Gibby talking about EB. I love the commentary about being a perfectionist and his excitement about the playbook. Gibby should be excited because he knows this is a ex-running backs coach, an ex-running back in the NFL that's coming in to coach him. And so he's going to be harder on that running back position than any other position, but also he's going to make sure that the running backs eat. Gibby in particular, they're going to utilize him as a weapon, I believe, and that's why he's probably so excited about, because there were times where they forgot about Antonio Gibson. That Bears game, he was the best player on the field for us, and he only touched it like maybe 5 or 6 times in that game. And it was that was the only possession where we moved the football and looked like a fluid offense. With the possession, I think it was the first possession of the second half, maybe the first possession of the fourth quarter, where Gibby touched it like 4 times and we went right down the field. And I'm like, why isn't he touching it more? And even Rivera said it after the game. We got to get Antonio Gibson more involved. Duh. So, yeah. We'll see what happens. Anyway, I digress. So now let's transition to the final segment of the show and garbage time. So I told you guys I was all over the place this weekend, watching a little bit of everything. I saw for those of you who've already watched the video, then you know I watched the Sam Howell video over on the 33rd team channel with Mike Marks breaking it down. And me and Mike Marks are here. It's almost like we watched film together or something. We were in lockstep. So I tried to send as many people over to that video if you haven't had a chance to watch it as possible. But I watched the fight. Obviously, I've been watching basketball. It's nothing for me to just not watch TV and just be cuddled up with my wife the entire weekend and we watching Netflix or some shit, or watching, the Huntsville show. I forgot. I can't even think of the damn name of the show, but the Huntsville show that comes on. Like, it's nothing for me to just zone out and not watch no sports, right? That wasn't me this weekend. I was locked in. And one of the things that I watched, I got excited when I saw him first and foremost. I didn't expect to be that excited. I ran into my guy Michael Mayock on over on Chris Long's channel. He has a show called The Green Light. And, obviously when you're an ex-player, ex-coach, ex-GM, whatever, you have access to people that you just, normal Joe Schmoes like myself just don't have. And Mike Mayock is really good friends with Howie Long. He talked about like him recruiting Howie Long to Boston College. And he was one of the guys that was showing Howie Long around the campus and showing him a good time and trying to help in his recruitment. And he talked about his Raiders tenure. And, we look at that tenure in Vegas. First of all, if you're a Raiders fan, I encourage you. I implore you to go and watch that interview. You must go watch that. It gives you a better insight into what Mike Mayock did and the vision that he had for the team and some of the mistakes that he made. You can go through all of the mistakes, and we highlighted the mistakes more so than the successes. And the mistakes were big, but there were a lot of successes too, right? And he talked about the biggest miss that anybody wanted to, and we absolutely crucified him. I know I have on this channel multiple times for the Cleveland Farrell pick. And he said, look, he says, Clee is top 5 best dudes I've ever met in my life. Love him to death. And he said that, so if you recall, that was the 2019 draft. And, the way they framed it, it makes it sound like, bro, what are we talking about here? Because he's, Chris Long's like, bro, you got Max Crosby in the 4th round of that year's draft. If you draft Max Crosby at 4 overall, which is where they drafted Cleveland Farrell, or Cleveland Farrell plays like Max Crosby, what are we talking about? Like, you still got the guy that you drafted in the 4th overall. You just got him in the 4th round. That's all, right? But that's not how it works, So anyway, he tells the story about how they landed on Cleveland Farrell. He's like, look, we wanted Nick Bosa, okay? He came in for the interview, cocky as all get out, talking all types of shit, and he's chirping in the building, and we're loving it. We're eating this shit up, Mike's like. And he's like, man, Mike's like, man, we don't know if you're not going to be there at 4, man. And Bosa, before he leaves, he turns and he says to him, well, looks like you need to make an effing trade now, don't you? And he said they all bust out laughing. And Mayock said, that's exactly what we tried to do. We called number 1 overall, which was Arizona. They weren't interested in moving. They were going to take Kyler Murray, and they did. They called the 49ers, who were sitting there at 2, made them a very generous offer. And he said they turned us down as well. They weren't looking to move. They wanted Bosa. He said the front office had already made up their minds that they wanted an edge rusher at 4. So his pool was pretty short. And he said, the biggest knock from everyone was you could have got him. Remember, the Raiders had 3 first-round picks that year. 3. And so a lot of people were saying, bro, you could have just taken him at 24. Remember, they took Cleveland Farrell, they took Josh Jacobs, and they took the safety Jonathan Abram. So those were the 3 first-rounders that year for the Raiders in 2019. And so he's like, you could have took him at 24, right? And he said the only other 2 players that they were considering at that pick were Josh Allen, the edge rusher in Jacksonville, and Ed Oliver in Buffalo. Those are the only 2 other guys that they were considering at the pick. And he said to John, and this was Mike Mayock's pick. He said, I told John, we're going to get killed for this. Trust me, I know we're going to get murdered for this. But if we're going to miss on a guy, we want to miss on a guy like this that's going to set the tone and the tempo for what we view as a Raider. Kid does everything the right way, immaculate work ethic. If we're going to miss, we're going to miss with a guy like this. He's going to set the tone for what we view as a Raider. And so that was his thought process. And of course, it jumped back. It came back and bit him in the ass, obviously. And he said Clee was a good dude, would come in, they would talk. And he said he thought that the comp for Clee was Chris Long, actually. And he said he brought him into the office and he showed him Chris Long tape after his rookie season. And he said, I liken you to Chris Long when we drafted you. I think you got a lot of Chris Long in you. And it was very similar. Chris Long's first 2 years, he only had like 9 or 10 sacks total. He had 4 in his first year and then like 5.5 his second year or something like that. And then he exploded in year 3. And then he took off from there and he never looked back. So Cleveland Farrell had like 4 sacks in his rookie season. Then it was 2.5. And, Mike was trying to get him to where he needed to be and it just never materialized. But, Mike said, look, everybody killed us for that pick. But that same draft, we had 5 Pro Bowlers in that draft. I was like, 5. But then they started listing the dudes. One of them was a punter in AJ Cole. You're like, okay, it's a punter, dude. But still, I'm taking credit for that shit if I'm Mike Mayock. And, after listening to Mike, and they didn't address, some of the other guys that they took that didn't work out. I would have loved to have known whose idea it was to take Damon Arnett, Garyon Conley. The Alex Leatherwood pick was one that was particularly questionable, but they made it abundantly clear that was a John Gruden pick. That was not Mike Mayock's guy, but Gruden wanted him, and so they took him. Ruggs, I would like to think that was a John Gruden guy as well, but they never got into the specifics of that stuff. So he talked about getting fired, right? And he said it was tough for him because, and I remember feeling this way. We talked about this. He said that after the 2021 season, they had won 10 games. They went to the playoffs. Remember, they lost to Cincinnati. They were at the 8-yard line, 1st and goal from the 8 with like 40 seconds left, and Carr ended up throwing the pick on like maybe 3rd or 4th down. I think it was 4th down. He threw the pick on 4th down. But they didn't get in. Obviously, they lost the game. And he said, the job that Rich Bisaccia did. And I talked about this because you got to remember what happened to the Raiders that year. You had the John Gruden, resigning. You had the Henry Ruggs situation. And then there was one more thing that happened in that season that was like, what else can happen to the Raiders? It was one more thing. I can't remember. But it was something else that was like, shit, are you kidding me? And Rich Bisaccia came in, handled everything in stride. And he said by the end of that season, he had every player in that team ready to run through a wall for him. And he's like, Bisaccia is one of those dudes. He'll MF you all practice long till the cows come home. And then after practice, there's 8 to 10 dudes in his office wanting to talk about life, not football, life. He's that kind of guy. And he was like, we saw things the same way philosophically. We had this thing right where we wanted it. You know, we just went to the playoffs. Derek Carr had gotten better each and every single year, which he had. And he was like, the roster was in good shape. And you know how this goes when you get an interim head coach. It's not often that he retains the job. I felt the same way about the Panthers. Now we'll see what happens with Frank Wright. But those players, they swore by their interim head coach. What's my man from the Arizona Cardinals? He was terrible with the Arizona Cardinals. He was in over his head. He wasn't ready yet. Shucks, I can't think of his name, but all the players to a man were like, nah, we want him to be the coach. And you saw how they turned their season around. They were a game out of winning that division. Like, they were terrible before they fired oh boy from college. They were terrible. Steve Wilkes, thank you. Shay Robinson, thank you, Rich. Steve Wilkes. They were terrible before he took over. And he had those boys believing. I remember late in the season, Detroit needed a game. They cooked the damn Lions. Cooked their ass right around Christmas time. Either right before or right after Christmas. Cooked the shit out of their ass. Ran for like 300 yards on them. Lions are chasing after a playoff berth, and they beat the shit out of their ass. But of course, when you are looking at the totality of your organization, you want the big splash. And Rich Bisaccia wouldn't have been a big splash. So you go out, you hire a GM from New England. He brings in Josh McDaniels, and the rest is history. And Mike Mayock got fired, and so did Rich Bisaccia. And you know, Mike's like, you know, it's criminal what's happened to Rich Bisaccia. He should be a head coach in the league. But that's nor here nor there. It was Mike doesn't know what he's going to do next. He was like, look, I just needed some time after getting fired. I had to talk to some people because he's like, you know, he talked to Bill Polian, who told him, look, bro, we all get fired. Everybody gets fired. You work in this league long enough, you're going to get fired. He's like, you know, just figure out what you did wrong and try to be better the next time. So I don't know if he's going to come back to TV, if he's going to try to pursue another gig, what may have you. But he was like, look, man, when I was done, I felt like shit. I looked like shit. I wasn't working out. He's like, what people don't know is GM is a 365, day a year, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day type of job. He's like, you don't sleep much. You don't get a lot of personal time. Even when you're off, you're not truly off. He talked about, who's the one GM you don't really want to try to do a deal with. And his guy was Howie Roseman, essentially. They were making fun of that situation because, he's a East Coast guy, is Mike Mayock, and he did some games for the Eagles. And so he was kind of close to that organization. And so him and Howie had a relationship, but he did a Howie Roseman impression and all of that good stuff. It was fun stuff. It was, it reminded me of why I missed him on television. And he doesn't even know what he's going to do next. Right now, he's just like, I'm just chilling right now, bro. But it just made me realize, damn, I miss Michael Mayock. And one thing that he said, and you know how I always tell y'all, it's Lion season, right? He said, anything you hear at the end of the draft period, he said, it's all bullshit. He said he called Daniel Jeremiah and said, look, you've done all your homework. You know exactly what it is, right? You don't need to do anything else. He says, just go get a workout in, bro. You've done your work already. You got this shit. Go get a workout in. All the shit you hear now is total bullshit. And it just reminded me to stay grounded in my belief, which is this Lion season. Remember, I told y'all when all this shit was flying around, Will Levis all the way to 1, and CJ Stroud isn't going 2, and the Texans aren't interested in taking a quarterback, and all this bullshit we heard in the final 3 weeks or so leading up to the draft, all this shit. I told y'all, I ain't buying none of it. It's Lion season. CJ Stroud, I did my mock draft and I said, CJ Stroud is going 2, damn it. And what did the Texans do? Took CJ Stroud. And all Michael Mayock did was he solidified how I feel. Don't believe the hype. Don't believe the bullshit. Especially late in the draft period. They're going to sell you a dream. He said, all of the shit you get. And he said, this is how it works in the GM information sphere. He said, if you're a GM and the information guys contact you and they got relationships with some of these teams, he said, you're trading information for information. So if Schefter hits you up, he's telling you what he's heard from other teams in exchange for you telling him a little bit of what you're thinking about and what you've heard, right? What you thinking about doing, maybe a prospect that you've talked to that you're like, nah, I'm not good on him, this, that, and the third. So you're exchanging it. He's like, I came from the media, so I told them I'm not playing that game. Don't even hit me up. But that's how it works. So I found all of that shit fascinating. Mike's my guy. I remember asking you guys a long time ago, would you welcome him back if NFL Network gave him, not necessarily his chair. I think they've already given that to DJ. They're not going to take that away from DJ as the lead draft analyst. But if they gave him, a co-lead draft analyst role, or, just had him back on the squad, would you be open to that? I remember once upon a time when Matt Millen was terrible as a GM for the Lions. It was like, bro, we don't want to hear shit from you. Like, bro, you lost all points. Okay. You get no love, no respect. I don't want to hear shit about a prospect. That's in one ear, out the other. I don't feel that way with Mike. But anyway, I digress. That's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on the 338th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I thank you guys for joining me. Look forward to chopping it up with y'all again on Wednesday. This is going to be a different week from a content perspective because it's a holiday weekend, and but I'm gonna still try to do my part to be active. I'm hoping this week we can get into a throwback podcast, so either a flashback Friday or a way back Wednesday, one or the other. I'm gonna look to make that happen this week. I was gonna do it last week, then I chickened out. I'm gonna do it this week though, whether it's Wednesday or Friday. If it's Friday, it could not happen. So if the best day for it to happen is Wednesday, where I'm definitely doing a pod. Friday's a little sketchy, but either way, we'll see. Anyway, that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on the Louie T Network podcast. You guys have a great rest of your evening, and we will reconvene tomorrow. Not on the podcast. If you're a Washington fan, I'll see you tomorrow. If you're looking for the podcast, I'll see you on Wednesday. Either way, you guys have a good one. And remember, if you haven't already done so, go check out MusicHead University. You won't be sorry. God bless and good night. The Louie T Network is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description.